Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hi, beautiful listeners. Welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. Today I have with me Amanda Marit. Amanda was considered successful in her corporate career, climbing the ladder, earning 5 promotions in 4 years. However, she was still unhappy and unfulfilled. Her work was uninspiring and had little impact on the greater community. Amanda began to open up to calling in her higher purpose in life and began grounding into Source as a higher power to bring this greater ambition into fruition. When she started a little blog in 2013 sharing her own transformational journey, readers began asking how they could work with her. In 2014, Amanda earned her spiritual coach certification and began taking on clients. By 2017, Amanda had the evidence that she needed to quit her corporate job and become her own leader. And she is going to talk to us all about that journey, as well as, cool quantum reality shifting stuff and keys to success and finding soul purpose, and so much more, I have no doubt. Thank you for being here, Amanda, and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Amy, so much for having me on here. And it's always cool to hear someone else read my story again because it brings back floods of memories.
Yeah, I love reading your bio, and just I feel like so many people, especially these days, can relate. Like it's not a new theme that people have felt like, oh, what's the point of the rat race and blah, blah, blah. But it feels really accelerated and top of mind. So many people right now just really questioning, like, why am I doing this thing that I don't enjoy? So I'm really excited to dive into it. And I would love to begin by hearing about your spiritual awakening journey and what that has looked like for you, what spiritual awakening even means to you and how it's infused in your life. Were you always a spiritual person, or did you go through kind of a spiritual awakening or a dark night of the soul, or was it like a gentle unfolding? How did it go for you?
Yeah. So I think sometimes it happens well, at least for me, it happened a bit in stages because I just remember as a young girl and as a teenager and into my college years being obsessed with, for me, it started just being obsessed with, the psychology of how human behavior and, my birth chart. And I was fascinated with the concept that angels could exist. I did grow up Catholic. I'm personally not religious anymore. It's been a long time since I've followed organized religion for me specifically. And I'll share more about why that is throughout the show. But it started off like that for me. So there's always some sort of pull to know that there's more to this experience. And I just kept getting so drawn to these concepts. I would drag my friends in college to, I remember we had like a tarot card reading thing in our university center, and I dragged all of my friends there. I was the crazy one, always dragging people to this woo-woo stuff, quote unquote. And so I had this obsession with it, but I didn't necessarily know where that would take me in life. I just knew that I trusted there was something more. And, as the years unfolded and I was going through my own journey, what really ignited, I guess, this inside of me and really led me more to my awakening of my gifts and everything like that. And just being aware that I had gifts my whole life really is what it is for many of us. It's like, oh, I've been intuitive my whole life. And we just understand how to navigate those things. And oh, I've been feeling feelings my whole life of other people's feelings. Oh, okay. That's, it makes so much sense. But what ended up happening to me was I was at a party, one of my very best friends, her dad's birthday party. And I almost didn't go, but they're so much fun. Their family's so much fun. And I decided to go. And I spotted this woman in the room, and she just had this mystical feeling to her. And she was a family friend. And we started talking, and she looked at me. She goes, "You're a light worker." And I had no clue what that meant. This was back in 2012, the end of 2012. But so we got to talking about what that meant. And it was, I started bawling. It was like a remembrance. I felt seen by her. I felt like something clicked and it made sense that I was actually here for something more because I felt different. I always felt like I was observing people in life. And
Mm.
so we were in the back corner of this home. We moved to the back corner of this home because I was bawling and we were just talking about this all night long. And I remember waking up the next day feeling like a weight was lifted off my shoulders, like things finally made sense. I felt this high in my body. And so that really started things for me in that way from someone just seeing me, seeing what I always felt different, not better than people, but just different. And I wasn't really sure why. And then beyond that point, what really catalyzed a lot of this even further for me was a series of really just unhealthy relationships. So I was the girl that chose all the wrong, quote unquote, wrong men and emotionally unavailable men. And it got to this point where I was climbing the ladder and successful, looking around at my personal life and feeling very lonely at night, feeling just why are all my friends in relationships? I feel like I have my crap together. And why can't I figure this part of my life out? Like why I don't understand. And it got really painful to a point where I saw a guy I was dating out with another woman. And that was a tipping point for me. And I got so fucking angry. To be honest with you, my middle finger went up and I said F you. I literally said F you, which was so out of character to me. And one of my girlfriends was standing next to me and she's like, Amanda, what was that? No one heard but him. Luckily, it wasn't in like a huge crowd or anything like that. I was walking into a bar and he was walking out with a woman. And so she's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened." And I decided in that moment, no more. No more of this. No more of this pattern. It was almost like my middle finger going up was a declaration to myself, the universe, and me finally claiming my worth and not settling for less in dating and relationships. And so I remember going to the bookstore and grabbing a stack of books and uncovering really trying to uncover why I was attracting this. And finally, I took radical responsibility for this pattern. I wasn't willing to experience this anymore. So I took matters into my own hands and I had this light bulb moment. Oh my gosh, I've been attracting this because I've been settling for this. I've been choosing it. I've been saying yes. I've not been valuing myself. And so then that really started the journey of self coming home to myself, knowing myself, learning what deep self love actually truly is, unconditional love, and seeing my value. And that, Amy, really has been like the foundation to all of my work has been self worth.
That's so beautiful, and I relate so much because I've shared on this podcast that I similarly had a pattern of dating all the wrong men, and it was really frustrating because I sometimes I would feel like baited and switched.
Mm,
Like there was a presentation at the beginning that was like, "Oh, I've got my shit together," and "Oh, I'm talking about like he would talk about wanting to have a real relationship and get settled down and stuff, and then things would come up, and but it was now, I mean, that was some years ago. I think it was in 2015 for me that I gave my middle finger to the universe. I'm not available to experience this anymore.
yes.
Um, and now looking back, like within, I don't know, it was probably about 9 months from making that decision that I attracted my partner that I have now, and he's just a whole different story. It like we are really happy together, very functional, but so now it feels like, oh, it was so easy, but I remember at the time, like you say, that self-love and that realization, like, I've been underselling myself.
Yes.
I've been selling myself short. I've been accepting, leavings and like pithy little offerings when I deserve everything. I deserve so much. And I'm the only one that can advocate for myself and show up for myself. It's such a powerful place to get. It's uncomfortable, but it's also super, super powerful.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And the universe listens
Yeah.
when we make that declaration, right? They really, in truth, the universe is always ever just responding to us. So if we're accepting less, we're pretty much saying yes to it. We're agreeing to it. We're saying, okay, yeah, this is all I'm worth. And so when I reminded myself of that, I decided no more, no more of that. And I'm so glad you got to that place too, because that's really what it takes to experience a change.
It really is. And was it a similar realization for yourself in your career? Like where so you were doing really well in your corporate
Hmm.
career, but not feeling the fulfillment. And was it a similar sort of realization of like, I could be having more, not from a place of greed, but like I could be having more satisfaction. I could be here being my light worker self. Was it a
Totally.
similar process?
It was probably not as angry, but because I did love my job up until I didn't love it, and I believe I was meant to be there to learn so many different business skills. And I ended up being there a total of 7 years. So yeah, the promotions came hot and quick, and then I ended up staying there a little, probably past the expiration date, but I do remember getting to a place of extreme frustration of why am I chained to this cubicle doing this work? I know it's not lighting me up. Having to sign onto my email at 7, 8 p.m. sometimes to answer an email or to work on something that I just am not passionate about. It's like this is bullshit. I don't want to be doing this. But at the same time, I was growing my business, so sometimes there can be that period in our life, right, that we are starting a business, moving into something, and maybe we still have our corporate job or something going on at the same time. That's at least what it was for me for almost 2 years, perhaps, or maybe more than a little over 2 years. And so, yeah, I definitely got to this place of frustration with that. And I think, the frustration I always tell people is a gift because it's a fire under your buns to take some action. Right. The frustration is there to tell you that something more is meant for you. And that in itself is something worth celebrating. So I would remind myself of that as I was, trying to move the needle forward in my business at the same time.
Yeah. I started my business in 2019 while I was working as a midwife, and I felt that frustration and I used it in the same way. I felt like I was laying the foundations of my business, although most of it was mindset work. I also had an infant of my own.
Oh wow.
And so I had very, very little time to actually work on my business. And so I was constantly in a state of frustration. And I am a manifesting generator with a sacral authority. So I just like, I feel frustration and it's super uncomfortable for me. But I kind of had no choice because I was under contract, but to just like find the silver lining of that frustration. I was like, the frustration is the energy building up that you then get to pour into your business when your contract is up. And the frustration is so that you don't fall into complacency and
Yes.
create
Yes.
a career that is it's very beautiful, but it's not the right fit for you.
Mhm.
Or could be like if it was too comfortable, I probably just would have stayed in it.
Totally. And that's the thing is most people do stay comfortable in their lives. So gratitude for that frustration because it's a sign there's something bigger calling your name. And, I train spiritual coaches now through I have my own program Illuminated that I run usually once a year, sometimes twice a year, depending if I get the guidance. Sometimes it'll be like, hey, you're doing another one in a month. And I'm like, I am from my guides. I'm like, okay. And then it's like, "Oh, I just told everyone this is the only round. And they're like, yeah, but we need you running this again. So that's one of the things I'm passionate about. So a lot of the people who join those types of programs are in the same place that I was in, you
Yeah.
know, in that place in that career or job that they're frustrated. So it's kind of cool to be able to help people walk them over the bridge, which is really just what Amy and I are doing is helping you all to, things we've been through, things that we know, understand, and have mastered, have gained the wisdom from, and now can share with you. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, my business, everything I'm doing now, my private practice, I have the pleasure of getting to support people in the public eye now. And that's, in my private practice, that's where I've been pulled to. And it's really exciting to get to help people with such a big reach And also, I ranged down from supporting different entrepreneurs and in my certification, as I mentioned to you. But really, all of this is because I have once struggled with all of these things. And I've made a living for myself, a thriving business for myself out of taking all of my pain and giving it a purpose.
Yes.
Hmm.
There's this one lyric in a song by John Frusciante that says, dedicating all of before to now. And that's why I feel like
Mm,
you can't do anything about what you've been through in the past,
yeah.
but you can dedicate all of it to like the highest creation in this moment, the highest outcome in this moment. And that is how we build like new realities for ourselves and build things like thriving businesses or beautiful relationships or, deep surrendered joy and pleasure in the daily minutia of life. But I would love to talk about more about your business, about like how you built that and kind of where it started and where it is now and what, because you talked about connecting with your spirit guides or like your guides give you instructions and things like that. Like so
Hmm.
sort of what it looks like for you to have built this business while being in touch with your light worker self and developing your intuition. And like you said, like really owning and accepting that you've always had intuitive gifts, but that
Hmm.
just didn't really know, you didn't realize that they were there before.
Right. Yeah. Well, I started so after all that point when, the awakenings had happened and I went on this journey, got obsessed with all the books, reading all the books about angels and being a light worker and law of attraction and creation. I've always been really excited and geek out on the fact that we can reality shift and quantum leap and manifest the things that we desire. And that's really what we're always doing. So we might as well be very directed with our thoughts and our emotions and our feelings. I geek out on this. And this is like another pillar to my work, really. And so I started to become obsessed with this. So I started writing about it. And then people started asking how they could work with me in my blog. And I didn't know at the time, as y'all heard in my bio, I didn't know. There wasn't a lot of people back in, 2013, 2014 doing this work. So I felt alone in that. I think I ended up meeting one other friend who in my town at the time I lived in Tampa, Florida, and now I live in Southern California. But at the time there wasn't really many people doing this. So I did some sort of online certification, to be honest with you, wasn't really that great, and that actually put a fire under my feet. I'm like, "You know what? I'm gonna master my own way to teach. I'm going to" because at this point, I started to realize and recognize the power of my intuition and some of the guidance I was receiving, and I decided one day I would create my own, which a few years later, I ended up doing that. And so what I was doing though is I would literally come home on my lunch breaks and I would put on music and I would just lay on my couch and I would put my focus on my third eye and I would imagine it opening and I would lay there for the like almost the whole hour. And I started feeling energy moving in that space and through my body. I started to feel things working through me. It was like this interesting tingly feeling all through my body and I felt my third eye pulsing and I didn't even know what I was doing at the time. I was just I could lay down for hours and feel the energy just working through my body. So I became obsessed. And I stopped going out as much with my friends, which was really confusing for them and I literally immersed myself in opening up my gifts and being able to know and trust my guidance and intuition and really that's how I've built again everything. So I'm very rebellious, although we absolutely need strategy in our business. My intuition comes first, the strategy comes second for me. Because if I'm not following my guidance and I'm just going by like a hard deadline or something like that, then we're missing out on, time doesn't actually really exist in the quantum field. So I always follow my guidance and, what I feel called to create and do. And it's never steered me wrong. So yeah. So, anyways, I don't want to digress too much for this, but I actually got to one point when I was growing my business inside my corporate job where I wasn't really saving money, to be honest with you, enough to leave. And my business was not really popping too much because I was in a corporate leadership role at that point. I was in a management role that was pretty high, pretty demanding. And I ended up doing something that most people wouldn't do probably, and maybe most people shouldn't do unless they get to this point where they can really leap and trust. But I ended up leaping out of my corporate job with no money saved. Like
Me
I didn't
too.
You did? I didn't
Yeah.
even know how I was gonna pay my rent in 2 weeks. Like that's how close I was to nothing. And that 12-month span ended up being there was definitely some low points, so don't glorify this when I say this. It did end up being a six-figure 12 months when I leapt out, but there was a moment where we got like 5 cents in our bank account. So but you did that too?
I did. Yeah. And
My gosh, I love it.
yeah, it was scary, and it
Mhm.
took me about, I think, like 14 months to start making, like, really, like, the kind of money that I was desiring, but it was worth it for me. I can't do that planning and playing safe. I see the
Mhm.
purpose of it, but I seem to be incapable of actually.
Same. You know what? I just when we get pushed to the edge, we find out what we're capable of
Yes, I think
sometimes.
that's it. Yeah.
And that's just how I work. I live on the edge. It's almost like I need to be forced to put myself into action and almost push to that place where you have to show up. Like
Yeah.
I had to show up for it. You know, I had to lean in to the fears. It was almost like I got squeezed out of all of the, I am not supported core wound, the I'm
Yeah.
not enough core wound, right? Like I really had to lean the F into all of those stories hardcore if I wanted to pay my rent.
Yeah, that's right.
So
It's like this incentive. It's like taking away all of your own hiding places.
Mhm.
It's
Yes.
being like, "You gotta do it."
Yes, it's like naked, completely just naked and raw and open. It's like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? But when I put my notice in, I ended up having a near 10K month that month, but it did dwindle out after a few months. And then I got pushed to this place. Actually, there was a point that year where I was at a coffee shop and my card got declined. And I thought I should have some money in there. And I paid with a credit card instead, and I sat down on the table, opened my banking app, and I saw 0.05 cents. 5 cents. 5 cents in my bank account. And I'm like, "Okay, this is interesting." And I actually was in this place because I had overdrafted a month or so before. Never in my life have I ever done that, by the way. So it was like a lot of shame for me in that moment that I had to work through. But I decided in that moment, I actually laughed. I'm like, "Okay, this is where I get to see how powerful I am and put these skills into practice." Because in truth, something could show up tomorrow, next week, whatever. And I leaned in so far to the fear of that and also just really doubled down on all of my practices. And in 2.5 weeks, that moment, I had 5 cents in my bank account in 2.5 weeks. I shifted so much in a way that I had a $19,000 2.5 weeks in my business, the biggest month I'd ever had in my life.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow, that is a quantum reality shift.
And the next month was a $41,000 month. Now, this is in sales, so things weren't coming in all the chunks in cash, but it was in sales, so it was booked. And so within 4.5 months, I had like 120,000, I think, in sales.
That's
So,
amazing.
it was a quantum leap. It
Yeah.
was
And
definitely a reality shift.
when did you know what you were doing? Like, I know you had that moment where you're like, "Well, shit, I got guess I gotta find out how powerful I am." But did you know what your process was as
Yeah.
you made that decision? Like, were you able to be really intentional, or was it a little bit like, "I'm going to figure out how it works and then kind of like retrace my steps from there," or a bit of both?
It was kind of a bit of both because I think when you achieve something you've never had before, there's this sense of entering the unknown in some way. And I had never made that much money at one point in time, ever, even in my corporate job. So, and I was doing well for myself, but having like a $40,000 month was not a thing in corporate America, at least for me.
Right.
And so there's this point where I was entering the unknown, but also it was the same practices that I had used to manifest anything else or create anything else. And again, because I was so obsessed with, really geeked out on the idea that we could reality shift, I entered a different reality. I really did. I found a way to trust. I had been working on trusting the universe for a while. So I was already in this place, right? Had already leapt in trust and knew that I was going to be supported in some way. And I really anchored that in. I know that I'm going to be supported. I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know when, but I know I am going to be supported. And I really worked on anchoring that in so hard. And really working on, I think what really sped the timelines up for me as well was really getting into my heart and getting into service. So instead of, it really took me out of fear and helped me to get aligned. And so what I mean by that is I would sit and say, who can I help? Who can I serve with this? I know this work is powerful. And but the knowing isn't enough. You have to feel it emotionally, right? So I would get into this state where I knew that I could help people. I knew the worth of my work, even though I was in this place financially. All the things that I was teaching, I knew how powerful it was. I knew the results my clients were getting from the ones that I had, and I believe that that helped me to quantum leap because I wasn't in a place of fear or lack. I was in a place of who can I help? Who could I give this to? But I also was still owning the worth of my work, right? Knowing its power. And then at the same time, I remember walking around my house saying, I'm booked out. I'm completely booked out with a waiting list. And I would literally walk around and say it until I felt it, say it until I could see it, say it until I could feel it. And I believe that that's also what helped me to leap.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's so challenging until you're in those moments, right? To like, mm, as I hear you recounting it, I'm hearing the words and I'm knowing that behind the words was the absolute devotion
Mhm.
moment
Yes.
to anchoring into that in the face of contradictory evidence and just
Hell
being
yeah.
like, fuck you, evidence. Like I
And
know this works. You're gonna change once I've absolutely anchored into this without wavering at all. And yet it is a moment to moment practice. And we do
mhm.
waver. And we just get better at retraining ourselves back to like, nope, I'm booked out with a waiting list. I am booked out with a waiting list and I am helping so many people with the power of my work. And it's not just about repeating it, it's about, like, repeating it and believing it,
Yes.
even if you don't have anything to support that belief and just stubbornly, almost, like, delusionally being like, "No, I don't care. This is real because I say so."
Yeah. And, it takes a lot of inner work. For me, visualization. For me, literally imagining as though I had entered that world. It almost, I don't know, it's interesting, but looking back, it was almost like I turned a switch on or something. And because I felt like I had blocked fear out pretty much for those couple of weeks. I just remember feeling like I knew. I got to this place where I knew it was coming. And for me, when I manifest things or I'm reality shifting, when I can click into that space of assumption, of expectation that I knew it was going to show up because I decided, because I was able to find a way to expect it, to find a way to sync there. It's like a really tiny micro shift in the energy. But when you get there, I always find everything starts showing up. And when I'm launching something, this is like right now we're in a launch for my entrepreneurs mastermind. And so I'm doing the same things again. And yes, I do fall out of it sometimes. But at that point in my life, there was some sort of switch that turned on and it was almost like I just knew. I knew that I was commanding forth some results. I knew that I was commanding forth clients. And it was interesting too, because I remember not counting the dollars. I remember looking back, I'm like, let's see what I did because I had signed on multiple higher ticket one on one clients and that's what got me to that number. And I remember going into at the time, I used PayPal. And so going in there, looking back and saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did this number in 2.5 weeks. Like I wasn't even counting it. So I remember that moment where I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, I totally quantum leapt and didn't even really understand how big the leap was for me. And because it didn't feel crazy. And I think it didn't feel crazy because I was already there energetically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It's like, literally, you get to the point of believing it so much that
Mhm.
it does kind of feel like, "Yeah, of course."
You've attuned to it already. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's normal.
I wonder, I was actually going to ask you about the numbers because in my process, I find that I get a number goal in mind, but I cannot fixate on that at all. Like I know some
Yeah.
people really can, and for me, I
Mhm.
can't. I just like it's like I need to just have the goal, but feel
Yeah.
what I think that would
Yes.
feel like, and then completely let the number go
Yes.
to the point where I don't. Just like you're saying, I don't track the sales or the money or anything that comes in until after the fact.
Mhm.
Um, and it's a really interesting thing because I hear a lot of people who do really well that they're able to focus on the goal of that money, or the number rather. And for me, it's like I have to be service anchored, like you were saying. I
Yes.
have to.
Yes.
That is my path to quantum reality shifting.
Mhm. I agree, service comes first no matter what. You lead with service, and to me, like, I work with very first class leaders. We're here to serve, we're here to help people, but we also do get to have the money too, right? Like, we get to have both. So for me, what works, for me, because everyone again is so different. So like you said, some people, having a rigid goal and working towards that really helps them. But for me, if that goal becomes more important than the service, then I've fallen out of my leadership, in the way that I choose to lead. But also, so what works for me is keeping the money kind of separate, not tied into the business. So for me, I'll set my pricing, and I will set some sort of goal or vision for what I want the group to look like and feel like, and how many people would be amazing in it. And sometimes I'll even be giving guidance on like the size of it. Sometimes they give me a number, like it's probably going to be like this, but then I have to get out of it. And then, so in my head too, it's like, okay, well, if I do attract this one high level client, then this is what they're going to be paying me, right? So the outcome is abundance, like the outcome is this, the outcome is that. So now I've set it aside because I don't need to focus on that. Like that's already been set in stone. So for me, it's just how many people can I support with this? Who needs me now? And really deepening, getting into that space again every day of the heart, of the power of the work, knowing that the outcome, the more people I get to help is the more obviously then the numbers go up. And so that's what really helps me manifest is just who's my next person that I could blast with love? Like who's the next person that we can sign into this, that's their life is about to change, when they sign in my mastermind. I know that like their life is about to shift in a big massive way. So staying focused on that is what helps me manifest clients for my programs and offers.
Yeah, I love that. I love it so much. And just I feel like that heart-centered space is what is allowing us to shift the paradigm of business and service and spirituality when we are anchored into that heart space. It feels almost like we are laundering the energy of money through our heart portal.
Mhm.
We're cleaning it off. And I believe that the energy of money really desires to be liberated from all of the confining constructs that have been attached to it. I don't believe that it is I connect to money as having a consciousness personally.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that it desires to be used as a tool or an excuse for our disempowerment. I don't believe it ever did, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
every perfect in its own way. But right now,
Mhm.
it has the energy of transformation. But I would love to move into a little bit of conversation around money and spirituality with you.
Mhm.
I've been wanting to broach this on the podcast for a long time, and I haven't gone there yet. So
Oh, cool.
to hear your
Yeah.
perspective on that.
I love
Yeah.
this topic. I love talking about money. It's actually one of my favorite topics to talk about because I agree with you, and I believe if we can, first of all, I think we could be both spiritual and overflowingly wealthy because in truth, when you look at the most powerful people in the world, they're the most wealthy. So I feel like we should be the most wealthy because we can change the world there's so many ways to change the world, but that's one way that I feel is my responsibility to teach about and to help other leaders with and help people to make a lot so that they can, one, be in freedom, because that's all that we actually want with the money is just to be in freedom, right? And also to be able to actually make an impact, a greater impact. Money can be a tool for doing that, right? And so if we give ourselves permission to let go of all the programming, because we've just been programmed around money, right? Like all the heaviness, all the density that we might feel, the fear, the shame, the greed, all this stuff is just because either we've seen it happen in the world. And so we don't want to be that person, or we've been programmed by our parents, by society that, oh, money's bad or wrong or dirty or all the things, right? And so we get to birth a new paradigm with this. We get to decide that money is just an exchange, right? Money's just a tool for freedom. It's not good, bad, right, or wrong. And so I also think in the spiritual community, it's seen as wrong, right? Or, you shouldn't earn for your work. And I think that's bullshit, in my opinion, because money is just an exchange. And you know, your clients are able to create it too. Once we give them the tools, they're able to create it, they're able to manifest it, they're able to have it, they're able to be with it. But I do feel that a sense of responsibility to be teaching about integrity with it, right? Like money is a side effect for the service that we put in the world. It is a byproduct. It's not the thing that makes us happy, but it can add value to your life if you're already happy, right? And so for me, I actually love luxury. I do. I love luxury because of the intention that goes into these items and the amount of care and the amount of joy and the amount of precision. And for me, I love that. So, you know, I call myself a little fancy, a lot of cosmic because I am a little fancy. I love my Mercedes Benz, but I always have to check in and say, who am I getting this for? Who am I buying this for? Is it for me or is it to show something? And I have to check, I always have to make sure it's for me. It's for me because there is a lot of people out there that'll, and especially in the coaching industry, that's like, oh, I just got this new handbag. And it's like, this is not, and you can feel the energy behind it, right? And it's not necessarily coming from this place of cleanliness, I don't know. So I don't like to show off the lifestyle to build a business, but in the same point in time, it is my lifestyle and it's what I love. But I hope that that makes sense.
Oh, it totally makes sense. And love what you said. And I kind of always feel a little bit awkward in the online spiritual, like soul entrepreneur world because I'm not a high luxury person. So I feel like I don't have anything to show for for myself. But then I remember like, no, you're supposed to be in your authenticity
Yes.
and that gives permission to others. But like I love I love personal growth and expansion. So I love joining people's masterminds. I love signing up for a new course. I decided I'm artistic and I also have two little children, so I never get to, it's too messy. So I did find myself a new iPad and an Apple Pencil and download Procreate. And I'm just like arting up a storm and buying vegetables for my garden and flowers for my gardens. And, it really is like you were saying, it's okay for us all to love
Yeah.
luxury. And it's it's also like just checking in and being like, do I love the luxury or was I told that this is how I can show my success? And I do.
Yeah.
I'm honestly like, how can I show my success? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like yesterday on my stories, I was like, well, I moved somewhere that's literally 3 minutes from the beach, and that's like my dream life. So
Yes.
that, it just is what it is. But I guess I feel like it wasn't that long ago that I felt super disempowered around money, super, super, super disempowered and held back by it. And I did a lot of inner work, as we all do, to shift that because you're right, we're birthing a new paradigm. And if anybody has ever birthed anything like an actual human or a business or some kind of project, we know that it's not a cakewalk. And
Mm.
so we do a lot of inner work around it. But now I have this life that is so curated to me. and my genuine joy that even if it's not showy, I'm in a state of overflow and I'm so much more creative. And like, I feel like I can just spontaneously hold a 3-part masterclass for $33 because I love my audience and I want to just like generously share. Or, I can create things from a state of surplus. Whereas, 3 years ago, when I was really feeling disempowered around money, I was like feeling like the complete opposite, like contracted in my creativity. Like I was trying to create things to make money rather than creating things from that space of like, it's just channeling through me. And so here it is.
Yeah, totally. Well, going back to what you said too, it's all personal regarding just like the luxury piece. It's all personal preference, right? So it's allowing everyone to be in their fullest expression and what's true for them. And that's going to be different for everyone. And there's no hierarchy, good, bad, right or wrong. Success is different even too, just aside from this, because I don't think success is in necessarily the physical items that you're able to show off, but the success is in how you feel. And everyone's idea of a dream life is something different. And I believe we have those desires inside of us. They're planted in our soul in our heart for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's like too, the types of clients that we're meant to serve and support, right? Like there's people in all different areas of life with all different interests, with all different visions for what they want, because that's exactly where we need to be as leaders, as light workers to support the people too that are drawn to who we are and our lifestyle. And that's one way at least. And so like your idea of your dream life is already magical for someone else. And so you're listening to this, it's not about that, right? So if you hear me talking, you're like, oh, I need to do that now in order to, it's like, do what feels good for you. And that's exactly where you're supposed to be. We're all supposed to be different. And because if we were all the same, that would one be so boring, but we wouldn't be able to help all the range of people that need support on this planet right now. And so it's just knowing that even where you are today is inspiring. Even what you've accomplished, everyone listening to this is inspiring, and it's not about that, right? So, but what I wanna just encourage people is to dream really big with their life. Like, if you could have everything that you want personally that would light you up, that would feel this sense of freedom, that would feel this sense of experiencing life to its fullest and from that deepest desire in your heart, give yourself permission to dream big because all is possible. We are literally in a playground for creation in these bodies, and life is short. And so for me, I'm going to make the most of everything that's I've been shown and visions I've had since a little girl of what I wanted my life to look like. I'll be damned if I don't actually tap into my fullest potential to see what's possible. And so I just want to encourage everyone, and it's 818 here right now. So it's like the infinity is understanding how infinite you truly are and to choose from abundance and overflow, whatever that looks like for you. Dream big because it's all possible. Everything's possible. I don't believe that our higher self source would give us a vision for life or for a desire in our heart if it was not meant for us or possible for us to have. Period.
I agree completely. And I feel like actually that dreaming big is often the place. It's like that foundational, extremely important step that we kind of unknowingly self-sabotage at that step. Because like I could think of a lot of people in my life who I'm the kind of person who will ask, like I'll ask my oldest son or I'll ask my partner or whatever, I'll just be like, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be? And they're like, oh God, your questions are so annoying. It's kind of because they don't want to think in that way because it immediately confronts them with their like perception of reality and their limitations. So,
Mhm.
and I can think so many other people I know that if I were to ask them, what is your biggest dream for yourself? They would they would hardly even detect their biggest dream. They would immediately try to fit it into what they think is possible and and shortchange themselves. by doing that because we are infinite. The potentials are limited. And I
Yeah.
don't mean potential or sorry, unlimited. And I don't mean potentials in the sense that it's a potential and it maybe could someday possibly happen, but probably not. I mean like the juicy live creation potential is unlimited and we have equal access to it no matter what our circumstances are, and we can mold that little by little into the life of our dreams. It's seldom about winning the lottery and magically having the whole life of your dreams. Our nervous systems usually can't handle that shit. And then we self sabotage because we're like, wow, like, wow, that's
Right.
too much change all at once. But if we can allow ourselves to dream the biggest dream, like you're saying, then little by little we can like sort of weave the threads of our reality into that timeline. And it starts to resemble piece by piece that biggest dream. And we also get all these like beautiful delicious surprises along the way, things that our conscious mind couldn't foresee as part of that dream, that just get to enhance it and really make all the colors and the flavors and the textures pop.
Yes. Absolutely. I love what you said there. And like, exactly, there's so many different potentials to tap into. And I see them almost as seeds of creation, right? It's like, what one do I want to tap into and choose? And then, but then it does require us to choose it and to leap into it and to embrace it and to start taking action toward it and be bold enough to discover what's possible and become that version of ourselves who can live in that world. This is a daily process for me.
Hmm.
I teach a lot of reprogramming, rewiring to become whoever you want to be in the world, understanding that we are not our conditioning. If you took away all your past, your programming, your conditioning, and you met yourself at a soul level, you would see how infinite you are. And so it's really about untangling from who we've been and understanding that we can become whoever we want. And from that space, we can create anything. But it does take commitment and devotion. And I'm very devoted to who I'm becoming every day. Does it mean I'm perfect? Does it mean I always do take the perfect action? No, I'm human, but I'm very devoted to what I'm creating. It's almost like, I mean, you have to choose that, right? And say, this is just what I'm having no matter what. And I've always had that mentality that I'm having this no matter what. And it might end up shifting along the way and looking different and being bigger, even being better than what I initially planned. But this is the direction I'm going in no matter what. And waking up every day with that decisiveness and that choice and just taking those steps, eventually you're going to get there. But it does require commitment and effort. Along with all the energy stuff that I'm sharing, we have to take inspired action consistently and work on becoming the version of ourselves required to have that, because we stop ourselves from receiving abundance. We stop ourselves from receiving the things we desire because we stay in our comfort zone.
Yeah. I love everything that you said. I especially like got all tingly when you used the word devotion because that's really what it is. It's like it's a
Hmm.
practice of devotion. And to me, coming always from a spiritual lens, I feel like it's the devotion to God or source, as it were, to like make the most of this life and to like every day, yeah, wake up and despite because we're always going to be at a place where always where there's things that we want that we don't have yet, and that's the beauty of it in my view. But we can choose to focus on the dissatisfaction, or we can choose to like be in that state of devotion of I'm going to have this. I'm cultivating this life. It is happening. It is coming. It is here. Whatever we need to do to bring our energy into that frequency of just unwillingness to settle, just to bring it back full circle, like an unwillingness to settle and believe that this is all we can have, but to cultivate the faith and the decisiveness and then put it into a devoted practice that like, no, everything I'm doing in alignment with this vision that I have.
Yes, exactly. And again, like exactly what you said, that devotion and just being so connected to your heart and the greater vision is what will give you that energy to show up when you don't feel like it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a huge thing, a huge part of the process for me too. So I love that you took that deeper for people. It's important to embrace that and then understand that as well. And you can create it, right? You can create a meaning to whatever you're creating. Like give it a big why. Like really pull that apart. Create something that's super inspiring for you to feel devoted to. Right. Like, so it's like for me thinking about this and all the work that I teach is if I don't, guess what? Like I know this work. I know what happens for my clients when they come into my world. I know what results people get. I know what I've created, and I'm a walking testimony for my work. And if I don't share this, if I'm not bold about it, then people aren't going to hear me, see me, know me. And it's my job to do that so that I can serve as many people as I possibly can. And so for me, it's coming back to that too and reminding myself of why I'm doing this so that, you know, if I'm tired one day or have an off day or I'm moving through something myself, like emotions, I can give it a purpose and let that move through me. And that will inspire you to stay devoted as well to things, not even just your own vision and your own freedom, because you get to have those things too. You get to want the freedom. You get to want the money. Yes, you get to want the money. It's okay. It's all right. It's okay to want these things. We're just playing in creation. You know, if you knew you could have it all and there was no funky feelings associated with it, and it was just energy and it was just a tool for freedom, like let yourself get ruthless with like be very bold about the things and unapologetic about what you want, right? And give it a whole big purpose and meaning. I think there's two sides to it. And some people are afraid to dip into their own desires because they're like, oh, that's greedy. It's just got to be only about this, about service. And we lead with that, right? But it's also about you and what you want to feel and create and the quality of your life and the meaning and the fulfillment and the experiences you want to have while you're alive. So I also want to add that in too.
Ah, what a beautiful mic drop. I love everything that you just said. And I just have one more question for you before we wrap up. I'm really personally interested and curious to know what themes that you are seeing come up in the collective consciousness that's represented by your client base and your audience. What kind of things are people really like shifting into? I personally believe that we're going through like this quarter. We're moving through a very powerful quantum shift in
Yeah.
our consciousness, our collective
Mhm.
consciousness. And I would love to just know how you see that playing out and what themes are coming up for people in your world.
Yes. Well, because I do support a lot of people who are leaders or they want to be leaders or they have a business or they're musicians or they're public facing, they're in some sort of leadership role. What I see for these people is just this deep desire to really start making things happen and putting things into motion because they're feeling this collective need and things I feel coming up where we really are going to be needed at a whole next level. I feel there's some shifts happening in with our humanity, and some people might not like these changes, right? I feel like more truth is coming out and people need somewhere to go to learn. They're going to feel more called to step into purpose. I feel like I'm being shown right now there's a whole new um Oh, that's interesting. Well, they were showing me that there's a whole new wave of light workers waking up, a whole new wave of people waking up. But I just keep seeing the word stars are aligning, like stars aligned. And so I feel right now, when I don't know when this is going live, but this is June 1st. And I feel for the next few months that there's a time where we have the ability to quantum leap in a bigger way. So the stuff that we're talking about today is very applicable to what people actually really need to hone in on right now because we have a chance to break free and to create massive reality shifts. I also do feel because these themes I'm noticing is people who are traditionally more in their masculine or logic driven, they're craving the intuition piece. They're craving the ability to trust the unseen more and to dabble in the spiritual space. So I'm getting asked a lot of questions by men, which is so fun, about intuition more than ever, which is very exciting more than ever. And so I also see that shift, right? The feminine rising, which I'm sure you've seen as well. And that's also very needed right now. So I really feel for spiritual teachers, coaches, healers, that this is a great space to be in right now because people are going to be entering at a rapid rate.
Yes, that aligns so much with an energy report that I did a few days ago. I used tarot cards to do the report, and I pulled the King of Wands, the Knight of Cups, and the King of Swords. And the message that I got through, so that I tuned to the Akashic field to get the message. And the message that came through was like a huge influx of people stepping into their light leadership
Mm.
as the King of Wands, and just being very like visible on whatever, whether that's, through social media or just in their own communities, but like leaving behind that desire to self-preserve and hide, and really being visible. And actually it benefits all of us. Like there's that little scarcity piece in our mind that can be like, oh, but the space is already so crowded. But what they showed me was this field of wildflowers, and they were
Mm.
like, more wildflowers equals more pollinators. Like
Ooh,
all the bees
yeah.
come, all the insects come, and we are just here to shine, 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 shine. Leave behind any illusion though that we are needing to rescue anyone.
Oh, for sure.
And then also that King of Swords piece to me was that the balance between the masculine and feminine, and the masculine coming into a deep reverence and respect for the feminine and the mystery and the void, and being able to like marry the heart and the mind. So I just love the synchronicity there.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's so in alignment with what I just shared. So it's so good. I didn't even catch that video yet. So that's crazy. We're so aligned. I'm not surprised.
Well, Amanda, this is such a beautiful conversation. I loved hearing your journey and your perspective, and I'm sure that the audience got so much richness out of it. Can you share with us what you have coming up right now, and where we can find you on the interwebs?
Yes, so at the end of June, I am launching a new mastermind, and this is I do support men and all different types of people from all over. However, this one's for feminines, divine feminines, and it is about everything she touches turns to gold. We are going to be focused in very heavily on manifestation and creation, like how much because of what I've been shown for this summer and into fall, we have the ability to manifest crazy things.
Yeah.
And in my world, people expect the magic, the miracles. And so this is for female leaders and entrepreneurs. We always touch a little bit on business strategy and upgrades and stuff like that because it's important to get a little direction. But really, because there's women of all industries, we focus on what we can create. These are for women who lead themselves, who already have businesses. And then outside of that, I have a course that I'm going to be creating coming up that's pretty much everything we talked about of being able to rewire yourself into the most successful, vibrant, radiant, abundant, magnetic version of you and create that abundance and success and freedom and all of that. So I will be having that coming up sometime this summer. And then if you are interested in getting trained by me, my program Illuminated, my coaching certification, apparently I might be doing another one this fall. That's just news to me. But otherwise, I usually do it once a year and starts in the spring of 2023. But if you are interested, get on my wait list because there might be one in the fall too.
Amazing. That also
Mhm.
is so exciting. And so I'm really excited about this because I'm getting very similar messages about creation and like what we're
Cool.
creating best in in this season, like quarter two and quarter three of this year. So wonderful. It was such a pleasure to speak with you and everybody. All of Amanda's links are in the show notes. So her social media links, her website, all the things, easy to find. Thank you so much, Amanda, for your time and your wisdom, and just for sharing your journey and your magic.
Thanks, Amy. This was such a fun conversation, such a beautiful conversation. So thank you so much for having me on and sharing me with your crew.
Mm. And beautiful listeners, thank you as always for the precious gold of your attention. I appreciate you more than I can say. I hope you have a beautiful day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you on the next episode.
Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode. I appreciate you more than my words could ever say. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you on the next episode.